What if I told you that the blueprint for modern venture capitalism and like extreme crisis management and basically the early survival of one of the world's largest religions all trace back to one single person?
Right. And it wasn't a king.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. Not a king, not a warrior. We are talking about a 6th century female billionaire operating in a society that, frankly, didn't even want women in the marketplace at all.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like complete fiction. But it is a phenomenal historical reality.
It really
We're
is.
talking about a level of influence that literally dictated the economic heartbeat of the entire Arabian Peninsula.
And that is exactly the core mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring the source material, the historical and biographical accounts of Hazrat Khadija,
Hmm.
because we want to answer one specific, just fascinating question for you listening, which is, what does it take for a woman to become a self-made billionaire in an intensely patriarchal world?
Yeah, and to answer that, we are drawing from, very comprehensive historical sources that chronicle her life.
Right.
Historically, she is known as the billionaire businesswoman,
Right.
as well as Tahira, which translates to the pure one, and Amirat Quraysh, which is the princess of Quraysh.
Wow, Princess of Quraysh, that is a title.
It is. But to understand how she achieved those titles, we really have to look at the environment she was born into.
Setting the stage, basically.
Exactly. So the year is 556 CE. And for context, that is about 15 years before the famous year of the elephant.
Okay, wait, I've heard that phrase before, but for anyone who isn't like a historian of ancient Arabia, what exactly is the year of the elephant and why are we using it as our baseline here?
Well, it was essentially this massive failed invasion of Mecca by an army that utilized actual war elephants.
Actual elephants in the desert.
It was such a monumental, just shocking event for the locals that they started using it as their year zero for their calendars.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she is born into this rugged, very tribal society. The Quraysh tribe is the dominant force in Mecca.
And they operate almost like a mafia, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Very rigid clan structures, incredibly territorial, and commerce is basically their lifeblood.
Wait, so if this society is built on rigid male-dominated clan structures, how does a woman even get a foot in the door to learn the mechanics of trade?
That's the thing.
Like, was she completely self-taught, or did someone on the inside show her the ropes?
She actually had a very powerful mentor, her father, Khalid bin Asad.
Okay.
He was a highly successful merchant from the Banu Asad sub-tribe. And he didn't just shelter her, He actively taught her the really intricate mechanics of regional trade.
So she had an apprenticeship, basically.
She did, but it was cut short. He was unfortunately killed in 590 CE during the Harb al-Fiyar.
Ah, the sources refer to that as the sacrilegious war, right?
Yes, exactly.
What makes a war sacrilegious in this specific context?
So in ancient Arabia, there were specific sacred months where fighting was strictly forbidden.
To protect trade routes and stuff.
Exactly. So trade and pilgrimage could happen safely. The Harb al-Fishar broke those sacred truces. It was devastating.
I can imagine.
It totally disrupted the economy, cost a lot of lives, and, well, it left Khadija without her father.
So suddenly, she isn't just an observer anymore.
Right. She has to step up and actively command a massive trading operation in an environment that is totally hostile to female leadership.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because knowing the theory of trade is one thing, Ringer,
Right.
but actually executing it as a woman in the 6th century is a totally different reality.
It's completely unprecedented.
Because the societal norms made it nearly impossible for her to physically travel. We are talking about massive merchant caravans, hundreds of camels traveling for months across treacherous, bandit-filled deserts to Syria and Yemen.
Yeah, you're not just taking a quick flight.
Exactly. So how do you scale a logistics empire when you literally can't even ride out with your own cargo?
Well, you innovate. If she couldn't physically be on the road, she had to construct a system where her physical presence wasn't the bottleneck for her company's growth.
Makes sense.
The sources detail that she utilized a business model called mudaraba.
Mudaraba. Okay, hearing you describe this, it honestly sounds like she was operating like a modern venture capitalist.
Very much so.
Or like a master franchisor, Because she isn't in the kitchen flipping the burgers, or in this case, out in the desert fighting off bandits.
Right, she's definitely not doing that.
She is sitting in her headquarters in Mecca, managing this massive portfolio of assets, injecting capital, and deploying operators.
That is a really brilliant way to frame it, actually. The mudaraba model is essentially profit sharing.
Okay.
So she provided the capital and the goods, and she hired trusted individuals, basically independent contractors, to lead her caravans.
And they get a cut?
Exactly. In exchange for their labor and the sheer physical risk of the journey, they received a predetermined share of the profits.
Smart.
But to make a VC-style portfolio work, she had to heavily diversify. She wasn't just moving one commodity.
What was she trading?
Her trade networks moved leather, perfumes, dry fruits, jewelry, oil, and spices.
It's funny you mentioned spices and textiles. In a way, those were like the tech stocks of the ancient world.
How do you mean?
Well, they're lightweight, they're highly durable, and markups, once you get them to a market like Syria, are just astronomical.
That's a great point. What's fascinating here is that her success wasn't merely a byproduct of having money to invest.
Right. Anyone can have money.
Exactly. It was a testament to a very specific, highly refined skill set.
Mm-hmm.
She had to possess extraordinary leadership and financial insight.
Right.
She was the one negotiating contracts, setting terms, and outmaneuvering male competitors who actually had the advantage of physical mobility.
But relying on remote managers creates a massive blind spot, doesn't it?
Huge.
Like if I hand someone $1 million worth of luxury perfumes and say, hey, take this to Syria for 3 months, we don't have digital tracking.
No GPS.
No SEC. There's no international police. What is to stop this contractor from just cooking the books or, I don't know, disappearing with my inventory and blaming it on a sandstorm?
Nothing, really. That is the glaring vulnerability of the Mudarba model.
Yeah.
In a pre-regulation world, you operate entirely on a reputation economy.
So it's all about trust.
Completely. The architecture of her empire rested on a single pillar, which was the absolute unbreakable honesty of the people she hired. If her managers were corrupt, her business would just bleed out.
Which brings us to arguably the most critical business decision she ever makes.
Yes.
She needs a new manager for this massive high-stakes caravan heading to Syria. And her close friend, Nafisa, comes to her with a recommendation.
Right.
She mentions a young man in Mecca who has a very specific nickname. People literally call him El-Amin.
Which translates to the trustworthy.
The trustworthy.
Yeah, and in a society where your word is your bond and fraud on the road is incredibly easy to commit, a title like that is the most valuable currency you can hold.
For sure.
Nafisa was referring to Muhammad, peace be upon him.
So Khadija calls him in, and she makes an executive offer. But looking at the numbers, I have to admit, it throws me off a bit.
Oh, how so?
She says, take my goods to Syria, and I will pay you double the standard profit share. Wait, double.
She did.
From a purely capitalist standpoint, paying a 100% premium over the market rate destroys your profit margins. Why would a seasoned CEO do that?
Because she understood the hidden costs of cheap labor.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, paying a standard rate to someone who might skim 20% off the top actually costs you more than paying a premium to someone whose integrity is guaranteed.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
It's a masterclass in risk management, really.
That makes total sense.
So Muhammad accepts the offer and embarks on the journey, and he's accompanied by Khadija's trusted servant, Maysara.
And the results of this trip are staggering. From a spreadsheet perspective, they come back and the profits are indeed doubled.
Right, a huge success.
Her investment strategy completely paid off, but Maysara comes back with an entirely different kind of report for his CEO.
He does.
He's not just talking about the supply chain. He's reporting these completely unexplainable events.
The historical sources are very specific about Maysara's account here.
What did he say?
He reported to Khadija that throughout the brutal, blistering heat of the desert journey, a cloud seemed to constantly hover over Muhammad, providing him shade.
Just a cloud following him.
Exactly. And furthermore, when they reached the city of Busra in Syria, a Christian monk observed him and recognized him as the final prophet foretold in ancient scriptures.
So she is sitting in Mecca. She's assessing the ROI of this business trip, which is flawless.
Big ROI.
But she's also judging his character based on Maysara's report, his honesty, his transparency, and these miraculous signs.
Right.
At what point does the savvy CEO look at this contractor and decide, you know what, this is the person I want as my life partner?
It really seems to have been a realization based on a profound alignment of values.
Like a values match.
Exactly. As the Princess of Quraysh, every powerful, wealthy man in Mecca wanted to marry her.
Yeah.
But she wasn't interested in a merger of wealth or political power. She was struck by his unique characteristics, his high morals, and his fundamental truthfulness.
So what does she do?
Well, breaking societal convention yet again, she didn't wait to be approached by a suitor. she initiated.
I love that.
Yeah, she sent a marriage proposal to him through her friend Nafisa.
She knows exactly what she wants, and she just executes.
Yep. He received the proposal, consulted with his uncle Abu Talib, and accepted.
And how old were they at this point?
At the time of their marriage, she was 40 years old, and he was 25.
Now, regarding her life before this proposal, there is some historical debate in the texts we reviewed.
Yes, there is a divergence in how different historical traditions record her past, and it is really important to report both impartially to fully understand the history.
Definitely.
The Shia school of thought maintains that this was Hazrat Khadija's very first marriage.
Okay.
Conversely, the Sunni school of thought records that she had been married twice before this and was a widow.
Got it.
But regardless of which historical tradition you study, both universally agree that her marriage to Muhammad was characterized by profound love, mutual respect, and an extraordinary partnership.
A partnership that is about to be tested in ways neither of them could have ever anticipated.
Truly.
And this is where our deep dive shifts. We move from her business acumen to how a brilliant leader handles an unprecedented, literally reality-shattering crisis.
Yeah.
Because 15 years into their marriage, her husband receives the first divine revelation at the cave of Hira.
And to understand the magnitude of what happens next, you have to look at her dedication leading up to that moment.
Okay.
It was his practice to go into isolation in the cave of Hira, which is situated high up on the Mountain of Light, Jabal al-Nur.
Just picture the physical reality of this for a second. You have a 55-year-old billionaire woman.
Right.
She could have armies of servants doing every physical task for her.
Without a doubt.
Instead, she is personally climbing a steep, rugged mountain to bring food and supplies to her husband in a cave.
Yes.
And she is doing this while completely ignoring the inevitable gossip and whispering of the elite Meccan society around her.
Exactly. And that unwavering physical loyalty is the foundation for her crisis response.
Because the crisis is huge.
It is. Muhammad returns from the cave after the first revelation of the Quran through the angel Gabriel. The experience is so overwhelmingly powerful, so beyond human comprehension, that he comes home terrified, trembling physically.
Wow.
He asks Khadija to cover him in a blanket, saying he fears for his life.
Think about how you react when someone in your life is having a total panic attack.
Right. It's startling.
Our instinct is usually to freak out with them or to try and immediately logic them out of it. If your husband comes home terrified, talking about an encounter with an angelic being in a cave, most people would assume their spouse had lost their mind.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, her reaction is a masterstroke of emotional intelligence. The source material offers a fascinating modern psychological analysis of her response. When he was terrified, she didn't panic, she didn't question his sanity, and she didn't dismiss his fear.
She stayed calm.
Very calm. She intuitively employed what modern psychology refers to as self-affirmation therapy.
Okay, explain how that actually works in practice, because this completely changes how we think about supporting someone in distress.
So self-affirmation therapy is based on the idea that when a person is experiencing severe emotional distress or an identity threat, you can calm their nervous system and restore their cognitive balance by reminding them of their core positive traits.
Oh, and their past actions.
Exactly, their past benevolent actions. It grounds them in their own established reality.
Wait, so she doesn't try to analyze the angel in the cave. She analyzes him.
Spot on. She tells him, by Allah, Allah will never disgrace you. You keep good relations with your kith and kin, you help the poor and the destitute, you serve your guests generously, and you assist the deserving calamity-afflicted ones.
That is so powerful.
It really is. She took his focus away from the terrifying unknown of the cave and redirected it to the absolute certainty of his own noble character.
Right, bringing him back to himself.
By verbally affirming his generosity and his integrity, she actively de-escalated his nervous system.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Calming him down is just step one.
Right.
She's a CEO at heart. She knows that once you stabilize a crisis, you have to gather data. You cannot make decisions in a vacuum. So she takes him to get an expert opinion.
Exactly. She takes him to her cousin, Waraka bin Nawfal.
Okay, who is he?
Waraka was a very significant figure in Mecca because, unlike the polytheists around them, he was a Christian who had deep scholarly knowledge of the previous scriptures, the Torah and the Gospel.
Got it.
Khadija knew that a spiritual event of this magnitude required a theological context.
So she is seeking a historical precedent to validate the experience.
And Waraka provides exactly that. After hearing the account, Waraka confirmed that the being who visited him was the same angel, the Namus, that had been sent to Moses. Waraka's words were crucial. They completely changed the framing of the event. It took a terrifying, isolated incident and placed it firmly within a noble divine legacy. It removed the prophet's sense of isolation.
And with that data secured and the context clear, Khadija doesn't hesitate for a second.
Not at all.
She instantly becomes the very first person on earth to accept Islam. She's the first to pray alongside him. She transitions from a business pioneer to a spiritual pioneer in a matter of hours.
Which sets the stage for the final and undoubtedly most difficult chapter of her life.
Yeah.
Having established her massive wealth and having solidified her spiritual conviction, the narrative moves to the ultimate test of her character.
Because we started this deep dive asking how a woman becomes a billionaire. But looking at the trajectory of her life, the real question we have to ask is, what is that wealth actually for?
Right.
Like, what does a self-made billionaire do when her core values demand the sacrifice of her entire empire?
Well, the environment in Mecca turned violently hostile once the message of Islam became public.
I can imagine.
The polytheist leaders of the Quraysh tribe saw the new religion, which preached equality and the end of idol worship, as a direct threat to their economic and social dominance.
Because their whole economy was tied to it.
Exactly. And when they couldn't stop the spread of the message through intimidation, they implemented a brutal, comprehensive boycott against the early Muslims.
And, boycott almost sounds too mild. This wasn't just people refusing to buy her textiles at the market.
Oh, no. It was a total siege. Because of that mafia-like clan structure we talked about earlier, they were able to enforce a complete embargo.
And full embargo.
The Muslims were forced out of their homes and into a harsh, arid valley known as Shib Abi Talib.
Wow.
It was a social, psychological, and financial strangulation. No one in Mecca was allowed to trade with them, marry them, or sell them food. They were entirely tracked.
Think about the contrast here for a second. She was Amir at Quraysh. She lived in absolute luxury, commanding wealth that most people couldn't even fathom. And now she's trapped in a rocky valley where the historical accounts say people were reduced to eating leaves and boiling old leather just to have something in their stomachs.
And this is where the billionaire becomes the lifeline for an entire community.
Yeah.
She has this vast, accumulated fortune, and she decides to completely liquidate it.
Just unloads all of it.
She spent every last ounce of her wealth to purchase food and supplies at massively inflated black market prices to feed and protect the besieged Muslims.
Unbelievable.
She transitioned from being the wealthiest woman in the entire region, living a life of extreme comfort, to enduring the agonizing pains of starvation.
She literally gave it all away, every single cent.
She did. And the physical toll of that 3-year siege was devastating. Shortly after the boycott finally ended, weakened by years of starvation and hardship, Hazrat Khadija passed away in 619 CE.
Just incredibly sad.
This was the 10th year of prophethood, just 3 years before the Muslims migrated to Medina. The prophet was so devastated by her loss, along with the loss of his uncle Abu Talib in the same year, that it is historically remembered as the Year of Sorrow.
Which really speaks volumes about her enduring legacy. The sources mention that long after she was gone, even when he had other wives and Islam had spread far beyond Mecca, the prophet's love and reverence for her never faded.
Never. He explicitly called her the best woman of his ummah, his community.
Wow.
Even years later, whenever he would slaughter an animal, he would specifically insist that a portion of the meat be sent to Khadija's old friends,
That is so sweet.
just to honor her memory and the people she loved. And the historical texts point to an even higher honor.
Oh, what's that?
It is recorded that God himself sent greetings of peace to Khadija via the angel Gabriel, promising her a peaceful house in heaven made of pearl, free from any noise or exhaustion,
A house made of pearl.
which is such a fitting reward for someone who endured so much chaos and hardship for her faith.
The source text we use draws a very powerful conclusion from her life story. The author argues that her life is the ultimate proof that Islam does not seek to imprison women or keep them out of public society.
Exactly. The thesis of the source is that the religion provides boundaries known as hududullah, and that within those ethical and moral boundaries, women have the absolute capacity to achieve immense success.
Right, they aren't held back.
No, they can contribute massively to society and lead in ways that shape history. Just as this billionaire businesswoman did, she didn't succeed in spite of her faith. Her faith and her character were the very engines of her success.
Okay, let's synthesize all of this for you listening.
Sure.
Khadija wasn't just a self-made billionaire because she knew how to find the best profit margins on spices and textiles in an ancient market.
Right, that was just the surface.
Exactly. She built her empire on an impeccable, uncompromising judgment of character. She utilized innovative delegation when society tried to physically ground her, and when the ultimate crisis hit, she deployed a level of emotional intelligence that modern psychology is only just catching up to.
She was a visionary in every sense of the word, in business, in partnership, and in faith.
So what does this all mean? We started by painting a picture of a woman accumulating massive power and wealth in a dusty Meccan market. But where does the story really leave us?
I think it leaves us with a profound shift in perspective. Yeah, we live in an era where billionaires are almost exclusively defined by how much wealth they can accumulate, how high their net worth can climb on a list, and how effectively they can hoard resources.
So true.
But history's most famous self-made businesswoman is ultimately remembered not for how she made her vast fortune, but for the moment she willingly gave every last cent of it away for a truth she believed in.
Wow.
It makes you wonder, is the true measure of a billionaire's legacy found in their accumulation or in their divestment?
That is a phenomenal question, and one that completely changes how you look at the definition of success. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the life of a true pioneer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next one.